ended up in Canada. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, so the people at home know who my good friend is?
Yeah, sure. My name is Taha. I was born in Misrata in North Africa in Libya. I graduated from United World College in 2015 from Maastricht in the Netherlands. Moved to Canada in 2016 to start my bachelor degree at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver. And I am part of the Libyan National Committee for UWC, as well as the UWC Governance Council, which is like kind of like the government body for United World Colleges.
Okay, great. Okay, so you came to Vancouver in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said you're part of the Libya National Committee. For someone who doesn't know, can you explain like a little bit, like what does it mean to be part of the National Committee, and maybe how you got to join the National Committee?
Yeah, sure. So actually then like maybe it might be good to zoom out a little bit to like talk about UWC in general. So UWC is a global movement that uses education as a force like to unite people from different nations. And the idea started in 1962 with one college in Wales in the UK. And now there's 18 colleges around the world. And students so basically countries get seats like to go to these, like for each one of these colleges, like per year kind of. And students who go to these countries, to these colleges are selected by national committees who are based in their own countries. So to summarize, there's 18 colleges around the world, and there's around 154 national committees in different countries around the world who are responsible for selecting students to go to study at these colleges. And most of these students actually like get financial like support. Some of them so the financial aspect is not related. Like it's one of the one part of the equation, but it's not the main thing. So if a student is selected, there's a high chance they would go regardless if they can pay the money or not. And so being part of the national committee, I joined the committee actually in 2015 as like immediately after I graduated. And from that time, there was like the situation in Libya is a bit unstable. So I actually had to almost create the committee at that time. And I have been like an acting head for the committee since the past 5 years. Right now we are reworking like our internal structure, etc. We're having an election hopefully like quite soon. But basically, yeah, like I've been leading the committee for the past 5 years. And every year we do selections where we select Libyan students or individuals who are living in Libya to go and study in these colleges. And so far, since we have started, I think we have selected around 27, 28 students to go to.
Wow, that's a lot. You said you select every week?
No, every year.
Every year. Oh, yes. Okay.
So there is selections in every country like that are happening all the time. Actually, right now, there's 2 routes. So there's the national. So if anyone is interested in applying, you can basically go apply.uwc.org, or you just write uwc.org, and then you will see the main website. You can either apply through your national committee or through something called GSP, which is the Global Selections Program. But almost like 154 countries have their own national committees, and they run their own selections on a yearly basis. Yeah, so this is UWC.
So it's either your country has a national committee, or you can just apply through the GSP,
which is like Global Selection Program. And also like, because for some people, like most of countries, they have like, it's a basic selection criteria. You need to be either like between 16 and 18. In some colleges, they might even like accept people up to 19 years old, like for the IB program. So all UWC schools, the main 2 years program is IB program. Most of like all the colleges would teach IB. Some others teach even like pre-IB levels, but for UWC or the one like the selection program that is global, and we have the national committees, students normally like study the IB diploma program. And yeah, so basically that's it, like in terms of like on the educational aspect. And when you are applying, so the main selection criteria is either the age or nationality. So, and residency, sorry. So some countries, like as long as if you are a resident over there in Libya, for instance, you can apply regardless if you are Libyan or not. And the same in other like countries as well. Or if you are Libyan, but you have also another nationality, you could also apply through the other national committee if you are living somewhere else. So yeah, but if you go there and actually apply.uwc.org, there's like a very basic eligibility criteria. They will ask you about your birthday, nationality, second nationality, etc. And then it will show you any other programs, like all the programs that are available for you to apply through.
So as long as you meet those, is there anything else, like maybe say, because sometimes, you know, like some programs, they'll say, we're looking for someone who, I don't know, has like participated in the community. Like, is that
Yes.
all? Like, is it just that simple? Just your age and your residency? That's all they look for?
No, that's the basic. So like that's, I would say like it's the basic program, like, sorry, the basic eligibility criteria.
Requirements.
Yeah, eligibility, like to apply. And then after that comes like the second layer where like all of our students, like the main idea of UWC is kind of like bringing like students from all over the world together. They get to know each other, but at the same time, like we try to see, like find something unique in each one of them, or like where you, like they become part of like this global community living with each other, and they try like to learn from each other. So first, like the academic aspect, they will be studying IB. IB is quite hard, like academically, and it's quite challenging. So we actually assessed them. Yeah, you did IB and you have seen it, and it's one of the strongest like like I would say like college kind of like preparation programs that exist in the world. But if you have the IB, it opens so many doors for you for scholarships after. And if you have an IB from UWC, that's even more. But so there's the academic aspect that we like look at. And also we look at leadership potential. And normally we judge this through like, as you said, like kind of like community like involvement, or like past achievements, as well as like motivation, like what you want to do after, you know, like UWC, and your track record of like things before. And yeah, like also like we also try to look at the individual holistically. So when we judge someone, like we also look at like, you know, the conditions where they are at. Like if, let's say I work with like in Libya, we like, when we look at like someone who's coming from a city where there was like an active war zone, or a city, or like someone from a family who is internally displaced, we take that into account when we are looking at academics, as well as like academic, as well as like involvement, etc. And this is like a practice that's seen always like in all of our national committees worldwide that I have like had interactions with.
Right. Yeah, and I agree that like IB is obviously very challenging. I do think, like, I just realized sometimes when we talk, like people who went to UWC, it's easy to just flow with it because like we know what we're talking about. But just to summarize, so you went to the UWC in Germany?
In Maastricht in the Netherlands.
Oh, no, in the Netherlands, right. And then I went to the one in Swaziland. So they are part of the 18 schools, you said, the 18 colleges that are in different parts of the world, where students from different parts of the world as well get to study together. But for you to be in that school, you need to apply through a national committee.
Yes.
In a nutshell.
Yes.
Okay. So then you do the IB, right? So it's 2 years.
Yeah.
And you said it also covers, so if you apply through the national committee, you would get some sort of financial funding for that 2 years. Is that correct?
So the idea is the model before, it used to be like, let's say, let me take Libya as an example, because then like we continue with the same narrative. Let's say this year in Libya, we would say that there is 5 seats for Libya. One in UWC Hong Kong, Lipuchan, which is in Hong Kong, one in Armenia, which is Dilijan, Thailand, India, and let's say like in Italy, Adriatic. Each one of these like offers could be like, when they come immediately, it could be like an offer that's all inclusive, which covers literally like everything, even pocket money, flight tickets, everything, visa costs, etc. Or it could be like something called partial offer, or it could be like up to full offer. The thing is, like when everyone applies to UWC normally, like we don't look at the finances early on. But then like at the last stages, let's say like we would be ranking them at the top 10 in our selection. And then at that stage, like we would start like looking at, because then like we would need to assign like places based on like academic potential, but also like financially, like does this person can cover the costs?
Can that person
afford it or not? And then based on that, like we would looking at like kind of like, yeah, like they're ranking in our choices. So for instance, if we have, let's say like 3 people who cannot afford it financially, but you know, like this person is like the top, the highest. So then that all-inclusive scholarship first would go to that person. But then there's another person who can only, like, we have, let's say, partial scholarship from Libu Chan, where like someone needs to pay 5,000 per year or something. And then like, we look at like, basically our ranking, and then like, okay, we would offer it to the first, like the second best person. And then if that person cannot make it, we will try to negotiate with them, with the school, etc. If, at the end cannot, it will go to the third. And then, basically like it follows. But overall, we do financial assessment with everyone, like in the last stage. So like kind of like the top 10. And then based on that, we also allocate like who goes where.
Who will get the funding? How many stages are there?
It depends, like on like the committee. Normally what we used to have, because now with COVID, everything is online.
Right.
But, normally before we used to have an online application where like everyone submits their applications. Then we have a panel of 5 to 7 reviewers who would review all of these applications. Then they would rank kind of like the top 20, sometimes the top 30. Then like we would invite the top 30 to an actual one long day kind of like activities, as well like personal interview session. And then out of these, and also they write like a knowledge exam at that time. So one logic and one kind of like general knowledge like exam. And then out of this, we would take the top 10. But now we are doing the whole thing online. So we have the first stage, and then immediately kind of like the personal interviews stage, etc. And we have like part of our application is like kind of essay type questions where we try like to learn more about the individual.
So it's easier now. You don't do a knowledge test, you said?
To some extent, but like the essay questions are designed to actually like to test you, like to see how aware are you like about what's going on locally, as well as like around in the world. But also like we do like the personal interviews are a bit longer now than they used to be before.
Okay.
And this is for Libya. Like in other national committees, it might be a bit slightly different. Like all of them, they would have the first stage for sure, and they would have the interviews for sure. But like what happens in between is depending on like what's going on in the world around. Yeah.
Right. Because different countries, different resources and that kind of stuff. Because I think that's the other thing is like other national committees
they might have weekends.
May have like, I don't know, like funding for like maybe 1 or 2 students, whereas some may only be able to, take more than 2 students, say, for example. So it depends on the national committee.
Yeah. And there are some countries where they actually have, like 25, 50 students per year, because they have like specific, like here in Canada, for instance, there is a college and they have partnership even with the government. So the government actually covers some scholarships, or Finland as well. So it's a lot like on the country. Yeah.
Okay. So once you go through that whole process, so now you're in the Netherlands, and it's covered, right? So you did IB. Can you take us through how you then ended up in Canada? So a little bit about like the application process. I know like for my UWC, I was applying to not just Canada, so I applied to the USA as well. So if you could also walk us a little bit through like what other countries were you looking into, and just that whole application experience.
Yeah, sure. To me, I actually looked at more of like the program that I would be doing. And I always like had interests more of like in design and business. It's like two kind of like different, like separated kind of like areas. And I wanted a place where I could actually do that while not like, or like a place which would give me kind of like the freedom to experiment with things in different like
with both.
Yeah, with both at the same time. And I always, I grew up doing lots of martial arts. So I have like a huge kind of like crush on China. So I wanted to go actually to NYU, but in China. And I applied there, got accepted. But then like in terms of like funding, I did not get enough funding to cover like what I wanted to do over there. So I had an option where I could, and to me, I had actually some applications to the US, but it wasn't my first priority. I had applications like to universities here in Canada, but wasn't really my priority. And this is in 2015. So I was either I would go to New York University in Shanghai, or I will take a gap year. That was like my decision at that time. And as I looked at it more at that time, I actually ended up taking a gap year. went back to Libya, and I was working between Libya and Tunisia. I had an amazing time, worked on multiple projects. And then I figured that SFU has like almost the same exact program that like I wanted to do in Shanghai. Yeah, in NYU Shanghai. And also there is a school called Quest University here in Canada, where they also you can create like your own question and gives you lots of freedom. And both of them had like amazing scholarships where you can come in here and do your academic program. And with Canada, like the difference between Canada and the US, it was very flexible in terms of like immigration, as well as like working during like your studies or like staying after, etc. So to me, like Canada made so much sense. So I applied to both schools. So Quest University in Squamish, which is actually not really far from us here, and Simon Fraser University here. And I got accepted to both. But then I got my offer for scholarship from SFU before Quest. And actually the deadline to accept or not was before my final kind of like interview for Quest. And to me, when I looked at SFU, it kind of like provided, Quest was like as an experiment or like as a way of thinking and also education. It's very unique. Something that's like super new, and it's still like, to me, I have friends who went there and I go visit from time to time. I think it's incredible for people who are interested in some like non-conventional kind of like styles of teaching. I think
non-conventional
an
study.
incredible
It's a very good model.
Yeah. But then like with SFU, I saw that I could actually, like, for instance, I wanted to go to China. I could do like 2 semesters with Tsinghua University, like in China. I actually, part of my education, I went and worked with a startup incubator in India. I was able like to do multiple like internships or like co-op, they call it here in Canada, which is like paid internship with like multiple institutions around here. So to me, like when I looked at like all that combination, and I had like an amazing scholarship, which kind of like covered all of my tuition fees, and plus you get living, like also you get living allowance, like to cover like your all of like your basic expenses. Plus, if you want to work, you are allowed to legally work up to 20 hours outside of school, or even more than that on campus. So all of that combination made SFU like the right choice. And looking backward, I started in like 2016 in fall. I finished in fall 2020 with a joint major in interactive arts and technology with business, did 3 co-ops, and also like I graduated with an extra certificate in innovation and entrepreneurship. So to me, like it was like a really good experience, and it provided me with the flexibility that I wanted. I experimented with stuff inside the classroom and outside, I would say.
So I just want to go a little bit back. So you said when you were applying, you applied to the USA, and then you also applied to, was Quest and SFU the only Canadian?
No. Yes. So when I was looking at my applications actually at that time, so that was like the second year, I had some places in the US and also here in Canada, but because at that time I had a university, okay, so being honest, at that time I had a university advisor, and they like encouraged me like a lot to like try applying to the US, even though I know that I would not go there, even if I got accepted.
Yeah, I think that they generally do that. Like I also got that from my advice as well, was make sure you apply to the USA, even if you don't want to go, type of thing.
Because you know, like one of the things that might be actually useful to people to know is with UWC, there's a partnership with someone called Shelby Davis. So there's the Davis Scholars Program. So as a UWCer, after you graduate from UWC, it's almost guaranteed. Like if you get accepted to a US-based college, and that is part of the Shelby Davis, the Davis Scholars Program, you get a full scholarship. Almost all of your like kind of like tuition and living fees kind of like covered. So that's why like most of us get encouraged to actually go and study like or like apply to US based colleges. So to me, because you have that more of like a safety, exactly, that was a safety option. But I think like as time passes, and like we have seen recently like how all the immigration stuff in the US being a bit unstable, more students have started like looking at other options. For instance, like I have because with selecting people from Libya, I still like keep in touch a lot with our students and our alumni. And we actually have an alumni who graduated from UWC Japan. And now she went back to Libya. And actually last week I was just talking to her, and she's going back to Japan to do her bachelor degree in a Japanese-based university, all in English, studying all in English with a full scholarship from the Japanese government. And also we have another student who is now studying in Maastricht, actually in the Netherlands, and she's applying to university. She got accepted to universities in Germany. And I think like with Germany, yes, you don't get like, very big fancy scholarships, but also German universities are for free. So
yes,
there is like, other alternatives. So like people sometimes they look at it, oh, I would go to the US, I get like, when you see kind of like the amount of scholarship that you would get, you would think that, oh, this is big, but actually most of it would actually directly go to just covering like your living expenses and your fees, like tuition expenses. So sometimes when you go somewhere else where you have, covering, your rent, monthly rent, let's say, or like other expenses, they get covered, and then you don't really have to worry about tuition fees because it's literally like zero. And now, like in general, like if you go in the Netherlands, there's like a website called Study in the Netherlands, and you go there and you see all these different things. Canada, there is like Study Canada. You go there and you see like, like different programs. Even here, like UBC, there is a cool program called like International Leaders of Tomorrow. And it's like for bachelor's level. And most universities actually like they have, so governments have their own programs, as well as like universities actually have their own programs and fees. So most people, like, especially if you are like seeking to study in English, there are lots of different programs that people can actually like apply to.
Yeah, I like that you say, like a lot of people, I think there was a time when the ultimate destination was the USA.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously now I think with everything that's just been happening there, like with the political climate, it's a bit, it's a bit worrying to be an international student in that kind of space. So it's good that like people should know about the other options that are available, because I think the USA has always been like number one for sure, but now I think it's important to know about what other options are available. So I like that you touched on that. So I think before go to the, sorry, did you say something?
Oh, but like one of the things though, like Linda, with the US, in terms of like educational innovation or like educational style, they still have like some of the best universities and like,
Of course,
teaching quality, etc. But I think, like if you look at it holistically, like for some people, it might not be the best option.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, like what you're saying, that you need to look at it holistically, because I think for me, like, for example, I definitely applied to the USA like you, but I knew just from like talking to different people that I didn't really know exactly the full details, but I knew that Canada has it's just more of an immigrant friendly like system. And so I used to talk to this girl that went to Canada. I mean, now she's back home, but basically she used to always tell me like it's just more friendly. And so you want to think about that, right? Like if you're going to go to a different country just for the education and just study, of course, then that's fine. But it's a good point to say, like, it depends what your long-term goal is. So if you not just want to study and like maybe you'd like to stay in that country a bit more, and use the opportunities there, then of course you need to think about those things.
And Linda, actually, like to echo your point, like you will be spending at least 3 or 4 years of your life in that specific place. So it's not only the like life inside the classroom, it's all like, the friends that you might make there, the connections with people, or even like the general kind of like climate, or like how would the community react to you outside? Could you be like kind of like yourself in this community? Would you like be able to grow in this like community? Another layer to it is also actually like the actual climate. Like for me personally, growing up like in a like my house in Libya was like near to the Mediterranean beach. I'm not like used to like living in a like snowy weather or like super cold.
Oh
to
yeah,
me, like that was important. Like I actually, sometimes people laugh about it, but like to me, actually, like that's really important. And that's why I look at like, Vancouver is one of the only few places that I could easily live in Canada. In other places, it would be really tough. So I think it's important really like to think about, like what's important to you and keep that in mind, because, you know, if you are not feeling comfortable in the place where you are, like it can be really hard to focus on education, like kind of like, you know, or like do any other things.
Yeah, that's actually such a good point, because it reminds me of like, even, you know, the brand names that you have, like your Harvards, like, it's nice to go to an Ivy League. It's nice to have that and say that's where I did my education. But I think, like, exactly what you're saying, like there are other things that are more important, like how will you, because your life is not just going to be about, you know, going to Harvard. Like, you need to make sure that, are you happy in that city? Do you like the culture? Do you find it expensive? Is it like beneficial for international students to live there? You know, you need to ask yourself all these questions, and not just like sort of go for it just because of the name.
And there is an opportunity cost for everything, Linda. Sometimes, you know, it's like, okay, having a Harvard name is worth it to like kind of like live in a cold place or sometime, or I'm not sure how is it like the weather over there, but yeah, I think it's good to like, you know, look at all these different, so how to say, like, kind of like matrix or like factors, and then like, make your decision.
Okay, so I want to now sort of move to your kind of like exactly what we just touched on, but in general, looking back, you sound like you had a very like you took out a lot from your educational experience, which is great. Like, you got exactly what you were looking for. What else, like, what advice would you give to anyone else who's an international student right now, either like trying to figure out if like where to go in terms of university, or anyone else who's probably already settled in and is like starting and settling down, like kind of like, okay, can you take us back to Taha in his first year? What else would you tell Taha in his first year?
Cool. Yeah, that's reflection. I would say actually, okay, so one thing like to clarify, I think like I was a bit lucky that like with my family, they were like very supportive in terms of my decisions. So it's like, you know, as long as like you navigated on your own, like do whatever you want, kind of like they didn't put too much pressure on me in terms of like, you know, you need to like finish like as fast as possible, do this, blah blah blah, so then you can like start working and then like support us or something, because I think like it's important to acknowledge that people might have like, you know, other restrictions or like things that put them under pressure. But I think for everyone, if you are like especially going like into an educational journey, it would be really beneficial to find someone who went like through a similar path to you, or like if you know, let's say if you are just starting here and like you want to go into computer science and your goal, let's say, is to work as a computer engineer with a specific, or like software engineer with a specific company, it will help a lot to find someone who actually did that or like just graduated. Send them a message, or like through anyone, just chat with them about like, okay, what kind of like, in order to get, let's say here in Canada, there's like internships. If you talk to people, or like co-op program, if you talk to people early, you might be able to know what classes you should take to gain like specific experience. So then like you could get better co-ops, or even early on, just like sometimes. And I actually have had these conversations with few people who have come here. And for instance, me knowing that I could, so if I knew, like if I would go back, talk to Taha again, I know that I like design more than like the business aspect. With the business aspect, I'm not like really into like, you know, accounting and the finance aspect. Yes, I understand it, but like it's not something that I want to do all the time. So when I was doing some of these classes, it was painful to me, like to actually put time into them. But I could have basically just done, let's say, a full-on major like in design and maybe like international studies or politics. Plus, I could have just did the certificate in business, which kind of like, you know, for me, it's about like financing new ventures, like covers the stuff, the parts of business. Because to me, it's like, how can I design a product and build a company on this product and make sure that this is sustainable business-wise? And that certificate gave me enough. So it could have actually saved me time. And if I was not like having the scholarship, that means it would have also saved me money. So I think now after like talk, and there are like specific programs, sometimes instead of like you taking, you know, each class on its own, SFU here has semester long program. So you do one program, one semester, and that covers, let's say, like 4 classes. So by the end of it, and it's a cohort based program. And I think it was incredible, like looking at them, I worked with them closely. They are incredible. Like it's more of like it's still like quite new, it's an experiment, but like the way you learn there and the kind of community they managed to build around these like cohorts is just
Right.
something different. Like I haven't seen that in other parts of the university. So I would say if I go back, I would say like not only look at things online by my own, or like just rely fully on like advisors like from the university. I would say like mainly, yes, listen to advisors, look at things online. But at the end of the day, if you are buying a product, you want to go and talk to the end user. And who is the end user? It's like another student, like, and I think that can be like really powerful, like actually going and then finding someone who did the same thing, like, or like something that you aspire to, because you don't need to repeat their mistakes. It's important to acknowledge that people has biases as well, but like I think sometimes when you talk to multiple people, you can, and looking at things online, I think you can like formulate better like knowledge or like ground that could support you to make more informative decisions about your educational journey.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think I sometimes look back, and I think also one of the reasons why I wanted to like speak about these things on the channel is because I knew you when I came. I knew so many other people, but I still made mistakes. So I was like, I can only imagine someone who's coming for the very first time in Canada and they don't know anyone, like they don't have a reference point. So yeah, I totally think it's important to just ask people, like, so you make sure that you don't make the same mistakes as them, or just see things coming ahead. So yeah, I agree with that. Would you say that, how do I want to phrase this in like the most
nice way? Simple.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so you enjoyed SFU. Technically we can say you had a good time.
I always try to make the best of whatever is in front of me.
That's true though. I studied with you, so I know. But okay, so is there anything else besides, actually wait, before we get into that, you mentioned COP. So I think COP is another way to obviously figure out if that's something, like what, say for example, what you're studying, is that something that you want to do?
Yes.
I know I wasn't really into COP until I met someone else. Actually, yeah, funny enough, I spoke to someone and they were like, no, you should do COP. So I was like, okay, I'll do COP since this person is telling me that I should check it out. Would you say that COP or internships in general, like, do you think that's a must, or do you think that would help people to sort of figure out where they should go, and if like this is the major they want to take, or do you think it's, because I mean it's expensive, that's the other thing. So do you think it's worth it? Like, I know you said there's opportunity cost with everything, of course, but would you say it's worth it?
So I would actually continue in the same kind of like line about like product experience or like reviews to some extent. Normally, if you're buying a product, like if you have a 14 days trial for a specific service, would you like go get it first, try, like would you rather get the 14 days trial, see it, if you like it, you continue with it, or just, get the full thing and pay like, a huge amount of money like early on without like even seeing it, and then you might be stuck like for a long period. And here it's not a Netflix subscription that you can end after, it's like a life subscription. And to me, that's how I see like jobs and co-ops, because basically co-op gives you, it's kind of like a 4-month trial to a specific career,
the trial
or like
part,
trial part, and then you go there, you try it, and then if it doesn't, it's either like one of two things. It's either confirms that this is the area, or like this is the industry that you want to work in, and this is actually, it's 2 layers, and this is the company that you want to work with. Or you might realize, oh, this is not what I want to do in my life, and then you can switch, and you might realize something else, or you could go and actually try, and then kind of like continue the same process again. And to me, if you like, when you ask me, yes, here like you get to, I think like the fees for international students is around, you pay around like, I think overall for that semester, like with all like the other fees, it reaches out almost to 1,000 Canadian dollars. But keep in mind that most co-ops here, like you would get at least like $2,500 per month, or even more. Or so then like basically if you work for 4 months, like you would be making that amount. And the plus side to that as well, so it's like that whatever you pay, you would actually make it up. And also it will help you in terms of like when you are applying to co-ops, it's only open for other students. So kind of like the applicant pool, like if you go outside, let's say you want to become a software engineer and you graduate and then you apply immediately like to a specific company, that means you are like kind of like competing in front like with all
with
of
a
the
whole
other,
lot of
yes. But then like with a co-op, it's basically other students who are in a very similar level to you. So your chances are a bit higher. And also if you like, yeah, accept the offer, you see it, you test it. If you like it, you continue. If not, you go back to school and then you move on. And actually lots of people even like do like part-time jobs with their companies after, or even get kind of like full-time positions immediately upon like graduation from their companies. And the cool part actually with SFU, and I think like with multiple places here in Canada, so co-ops, all of them are paid, and you could do international co-ops. So one of my co-ops was international. So I went, like, it's not only like you would be working like testing a specific company, yeah, you could go abroad. And actually with SFU, they even have specific scholarships for these programs or awards for these programs. So when you go, you even like get some of your stuff like covered as well, and you still even get paid, etc. So it's like, you know, multiple things in one. So I feel like there are very interesting, cool opportunities, but sometimes like we need to like do some like the earlier you start kind of like trying to search them, the better you can position yourself for them. But also, you know, it's never too late. Like, and even like, you know, today we are talking and I'm telling you that, oh, I'm like more going into like, let's say business and design and all of this. Sorry. But then like maybe something would happen and then I realize, no, I am like more into like something else. So, but yeah, I would say like if you have the opportunity to make use of the co-op program, yeah, I would say do it. Like if you don't have, you know, like a specific pressure to like graduate immediately, etc. And it actually helps you also with your work after. Because when you graduate, it's if you have like 3 years of co-op, 3 terms of co-op, that's 1 year of work experience. So it counts.
No, yeah, that's true. It definitely counts. I know mine helped me a lot to get like a job after graduating. One last thing, a bit of like a sensitive topic, but there's a lot of international students, specifically Africans, who are sort of, you know, moving towards Canada, USA, wherever outside of the continent to go and study. What are your thoughts on that? Like, there's a lot of people who leave. I'm one of them. You're one of them. Yeah. What are your thoughts on like the brain drain and like, I mean, again, it depends on the person, but I just want to know, do you kind of worry? Because I worry personally that sometimes there's too many of us coming this side and then not too many of us going back. So in terms of like, this is just like in terms of being an African and then going back and giving back to the continent.
So you mean like overall?
Overall.
To me, to be honest, like the idea like of actual borders and you know, like kind of like nation state, I see it kind of like dissolving as like time moves forward. But you know, like with Africa, we have been positioned differently because of like the colonial history and what's going on, and there is like lots of work that needs to be done there. Totally agree. But also I know, or like the way I perceive the world is like all nations have been like kind of like built based on like hybridity, in terms of like, you know, you learn from one nation and then like you get here, you go study somewhere, you learn from that, and then like, you know, in return you could like change your own like hometown, or you could be like changing and making impact in the new place where you are at. So to me, I see it as like if you are making, and like especially like, and to be honest, this question comes back to me a lot, especially with UWC in Libya. Everyone is like, oh Taha, you are like getting some of our best brains outside. What's happening? Like, you know, like you are actually harming the country, like not really helping. But to me, I see it like if you have this one individual, they get educated like somewhere else. It's not only even like about the education, but also the experience, kind of like, you know, being almost an ambassador of their country to somewhere else, and then like learning from the other culture. Whenever like they come back, either like, you know, if they can impact their family directly, financially, like they could be like helping their families, or like even like their surroundings, or like even their peers, kind of like in terms of like knowledge, or like kind of like the way of thinking sometimes kind of like becomes like a bit like more global, etc. So I feel that impact could be there for so many people, and I have seen friends who tried like to go back, establish themselves. Sometimes it gets a bit harder when you get used to like a specific lifestyle in one place, and then you try to go back, and you know, like also the system, let's say like the system in Libya, if you have not like established yourself over there and you don't have like the right connections and everything, sometimes it's really hard to like go back and actually establish yourself over there.
Mm-hmm.
So for so many people, they'll be like, you know, my life is very comfortable here. Why would I do that? I'll just stay here and like continue. But at the same time, there are like many others who are still, even though they are away, like here or any other place, they would still like have connections, or like they still like influence their country like in different ways. So I feel like that was a long answer that like I went around the top, but like it is there. There are lots of people that like who go out, like it's when you compare it financially, it's really hard to find the same exact like job that would give you the same salary, let's say here and there. But at the same time, if you work here for, let's say 1, 2, 3 years, you are getting like lots of expertise, like experience in specific field. Then you can go back where you have like, you know, more, I would say like financial resources, more expertise, where you can establish your own business or establish like your own like partnership with something. And like I know many people who did that. Some of them even after 10 or 15 years, where like, you know, that like even like looking at yourself right now, like going back with your like kind of like existing, let's say like network, as well as like finances, as well as like expertise, what kind of like impact can you do over there against like what could you do in 10 years if you have like more in terms of like, you know, financial resources, network, and as well as like expertise. So to me, I always encourage.
The short answer is
my short answer is it's there, it's possible. But at the same time, to be honest, to me, like as long as like you are changing or like making positive impact anywhere in the world, I think it somehow like, you know, goes back. As long as, you know, like back. And to me, like, you know, like actually my fear is not really like the brain drain in itself, because like you could be actually here and still like, let's say, influence, like if you are in Canada, like influence Canadian policies towards your country. Or like I have friends who are in the US, and the US politically is very influential. And they are actually influencing the US policy towards Libya, and they are making impressive impact. And they were able like to achieve things that they would have not been able to do it like back home.
If they were home.
Yeah. So to me, like, you know, seeing that, like, but what I fear most is almost like, it's like being away from who you are, or like being actually washed away from your identity, and like kind of like forgetting about, you know, like yeah, like kind of like being in denial about like your like ancestors, or like kind of like, you know, kind of like refusing your past, and almost like being colonized again, but like more of like forgetting. Like, but at the same time, you know, the idea of hybridity, I feel like with cultures we build on each other's, nations we build on each other. So it's more about like being that bridge between the two cultures, rather than like isolating yourself, either even like coming to Canada but being fully Libyan but in Canada, or the other way around. Even like some people go back and then be Canadian in Libya. So to me, like it's more about, you know, like bridging these two and then making like positive impact wherever you are, more than actually the fear of like, and my fear is actually like kind of like,
people letting go of like where they came from. Right. No, I get it. That's a big